I have to tell you something very honest. I could read English. I could write English. I could pass my English grammar tests in school. I thought I was good at English. But there was one big problem. When I opened my mouth to speak, people looked confused. Sometimes they smiled politely. Sometimes they asked me to repeat. And sometimes, they just stopped listening. I remember thinking, why? I know the words. I know the grammar. I'm saying everything correctly in my head. But it didn't matter. My pronunciation was bad. I didn't even know it was that bad. I thought people would understand me because my English level was good enough. But pronunciation is different. It's like music, the notes can be correct, but if you play them in the wrong rhythm, the song sounds strange. My speech was like that, the words were correct, but the sound was wrong. It was frustrating. It was embarrassing. And it made me afraid to speak. The worst part was, I felt stuck. I didn't know how to fix it. In my country, we didn't learn pronunciation very much in school. We learned grammar rules, reading skills, writing essays. But speaking? Not much. And pronunciation? Almost never. So I had this strange situation. I could understand English movies if I read subtitles. I could write emails to my foreign friends. But when I met them in person, it felt like we were speaking two different languages. My English was a bridge, but the bridge was broken in the middle. I remember one day, a friend said, "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying." It was like a small knife in my heart. I felt shy. I laughed to hide my feelings, but inside I thought, I must find a way to fix this. I can't live like this forever. That was the moment my journey started, a long, slow, but exciting journey to speak clearly. One of my first big embarrassments happened in a restaurant. I was visiting another city, and I went to a small cafe. I wanted to order a cup of tea. Easy, right? I had said this phrase many times in my English class. So I smiled at the waiter and said, "I want a cup of tea, please." The waiter looked at me with a puzzled face. He said, "Sorry." I repeated, a little louder. "A cup of tea." He still looked confused. Finally, I pointed to the menu. He said, "Oh. A cup of tea." But that's exactly what I thought I said. The problem was, I didn't stress the words like a native speaker. My vowels were too short. I said, "cup of tea," instead of "cup of tea." In my head, it was fine. In reality, it was not. That moment stayed with me. I thought, if even something simple like tea is a problem, what will happen with long sentences? Another time, I was at a party. There were people from different countries. I wanted to introduce myself and make friends. I went to a group and said my name and where I was from. I thought I spoke clearly. But someone leaned forward and asked, "Where?" "Sorry, can you say that again?" I repeated. They still didn't get it. A third person guessed wrong, they thought I said a completely different country. I laughed, but I felt embarrassed. I had to spell the name of my country letter by letter. By the time they understood, the conversation had already moved on. I stood there, smiling, but inside I felt small. I realized then that bad pronunciation is not just about sounds. It's also about rhythm, stress, and how quickly people decide to listen to you. If your first words are unclear, they may stop trying. That made me scared to start conversations. The most painful experience was during a job interview. It was my dream job in a company that worked with many international clients. I had passed the first written test easily. The second step was a video call interview. I dressed nicely, smiled, and tried to be confident. But during the first question, the interviewer asked me to repeat my answer twice. Then again for the third question. I could see their face, they were trying, but they didn't understand me well. My answers were correct in meaning, but the pronunciation was off. After the interview, I knew I didn't get the job. And I was right. A week later, they sent me a polite email saying they had chosen someone else. I cried that day. Not because I wasn't good enough for the job, but because my voice, my English voice, was blocking me from opportunities. These moments kept happening. Small misunderstandings in shops. Awkward silences in conversations. Long explanations for simple words. I began to speak less in English, even when I had the chance. I didn't want to feel that red face of embarrassment again. But here's the truth, avoiding speaking doesn't solve the problem. It makes it worse. My listening skills were improving because I watched movies and listened to songs, but my speaking skills were frozen. I knew I had to face this problem directly. The more I avoided it, the bigger it became in my head. My English was like a car with a strong engine but broken wheels. It could not go far without fixing the basics. The lowest point came one evening when I called a hotel to book a room. I had practiced the sentence many times, "Hello, I'd like to book a room for 2 nights." But when I said it, the person on the phone kept asking me to repeat. Then they passed the phone to another worker. I had to repeat again. My face was hot. My hands were shaking. I felt like my words were trapped in my mouth. After that call, I sat on my bed and thought, maybe I will never speak clearly. Maybe English speaking is not for me. It was a dark thought, but in that moment, I really believed it. I almost decided to stop trying. I remember avoiding phone calls after that. I would send emails or text messages instead. If I had to speak, I would prepare a script and try to read it. But even then, my pronunciation problems made the script useless. I felt like a singer who knows the lyrics but can't sing in tune. My friends told me, "Don't worry, your English is fine." But deep inside, I knew it wasn't. I wanted more than just fine. I wanted to be understood the first time, every time. I wanted my words to feel natural and easy. I wanted to sound confident, not nervous. But I didn't know where to start. That feeling, wanting something but not knowing how to get it, can make you feel very small. One night, I was watching a movie in English. I noticed how clearly the actors spoke, even when they spoke fast. I could catch the words because the sounds were clear. And then it hit me, I had never really learned how to make those sounds. I was just using the sounds from my native language to speak English. That's why people struggled to understand me. It wasn't my vocabulary. It wasn't my grammar. It was my pronunciation system, my sound map, that was wrong. I realized then that I couldn't fix this just by speaking more. I needed to study pronunciation like a real subject. This was a big turning point. I started reading online about pronunciation. I learned a very important truth: you don't need a perfect accent to be understood. You don't have to sound British or American or Australian. What matters is clarity, making your sounds easy to recognize. This idea made me feel lighter. I didn't have to copy someone 100%. I just had to make my speech clear enough for anyone to understand. I also learned that pronunciation is like a muscle. If you never train it, it stays weak. If you train it every day, even for 10 minutes, it gets stronger. That gave me hope. I told myself, okay. I will train my mouth. I will train my ears. I will learn this step by step. That was the start of my real improvement. When I first started researching pronunciation, I was overwhelmed. There were so many videos, lessons, and teachers online. Some talked about connected speech, others about intonation, others about phonetic symbols. At first, I tried to study everything at once. That was a mistake. It was too much information. So I decided to focus on the basics: vowel sounds, consonant sounds, word stress, and sentence rhythm. I made a list of sounds that were difficult for me. For example, the th sound in think and this was very hard. In my language, we don't have this sound, so I was replacing it with t or d. No wonder people got confused. Another problem was long and short vowels. I often mixed them up, saying ship instead of sheep, or live instead of leave. These small differences can completely change meaning. Once I saw the specific problems, I knew exactly where to start working. One thing that helped me emotionally was learning to accept my natural accent. In the past, I thought I had to erase my accent and sound like a native speaker to be respected. That belief made me feel like I was always failing. But then I realized, an accent is not a problem. It's a sign of my life, my culture, my story. The problem was not my accent, it was unclear sounds. There are many people who speak English with strong accents, but everyone understands them because their pronunciation is clear. This gave me freedom. I didn't have to pretend to be someone else. I just had to make my speech easy to follow. That change in mindset made my practice less stressful and more enjoyable. I could focus on clarity instead of chasing perfection. My first serious practice was very simple. I chose one difficult sound and practiced it every day. For example, the th in think. I put my tongue between my teeth, blew air out, and made the sound slowly. I did this while looking in the mirror to check my mouth position. At first, I felt silly, but after a week, the sound started to feel more natural. Then I practiced the th in this one is voiced, so I had to make my throat vibrate. I also recorded myself saying words with these sounds: think, thank, thin, this, that, these, those. Listening to my own voice was uncomfortable at first, but it helped me hear my mistakes. Slowly, I started to hear the difference between my old pronunciation and my new one. Another big step was improving my listening. I realized that if I couldn't hear the difference between sounds, I couldn't produce them well. So I started listening like a detective. I watched short clips from TV shows or YouTube and repeated what I heard. I didn't try to understand every word, I just focused on the sound, rhythm, and stress. I noticed how native speakers moved their mouths, how they connected words, how their voices went up and down. I would pause, repeat, and mimic exactly. Sometimes I even copied their facial expressions. This shadowing technique helped me feel the rhythm of English in my body, not just my head. The biggest challenge was making pronunciation practice a daily habit. At first, I practiced only when I had time, which was not often. So I made a rule: 5 minutes every day, no excuses. 5 minutes is not much, but it adds up. I practiced while brushing my teeth, cooking, or walking. I repeated phrases from songs or movies. I read a paragraph from a book out loud and tried to make it sound smooth. The short, daily practice was better than long sessions once a week. My mouth started to remember the new shapes and movements. After about a month of daily practice, I noticed small changes. People stopped asking me to repeat as often. I could say th words without thinking too much. My cup of tea sounded more like cup of tea and less like cup of tea. These wins felt small, but they gave me huge motivation. I realized pronunciation is not magic, it's training. Just like learning to play guitar or type fast, it's about repetition and muscle memory. This made me believe that bigger improvements were possible if I kept going. My first big breakthrough came when I was in a shop buying bread. I asked the cashier for 3 loaves of bread. Before, my 3 would sound like tree, and I would get confused looks. But this time, I made the th clearly. The cashier understood me immediately, without asking me to repeat. It was such a small interaction, but it felt like winning a medal. I walked out of that shop smiling. I thought, yes. It works. My practice is working. That small success gave me the energy to practice even harder. Another moment came at a bus stop. A tourist asked me for directions in English. I explained clearly, using slow, careful speech. The tourist nodded, thanked me, and walked away without asking me to repeat anything. This might sound normal, but for me, it was huge. In the past, I would panic in these situations. My words would come out too fast, unclear, and mixed with my native language sounds. But this time, I was calm. I focused on clarity, and it worked. That's when I realized something important. Pronunciation practice doesn't just improve sounds, it gives you confidence in real-life situations. A few months later, I had to give a short presentation at work. Normally, I would feel nervous and rush through my words. But I prepared differently this time. I practiced every sentence out loud. I recorded myself and listened. I fixed the weak sounds and practiced again. On presentation day, I spoke slowly, clearly, and with pauses. I saw my colleagues nodding while I talked. Nobody asked me to repeat anything. Afterward, one colleague even said, "Your English is really clear." That compliment stayed in my heart for weeks. It was proof that all the small daily efforts were adding up. By this point, I understood that pronunciation improvement is not a straight line. Some days, I felt like I spoke perfectly. Other days, I made old mistakes again. But I learned not to get discouraged. Improvement is like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you go up quickly, sometimes slowly, sometimes you even go down a little. But as long as you keep moving, you will reach the top. I also realized that pronunciation is connected to confidence. When I spoke clearly, I felt more confident. And when I felt confident, I spoke even more clearly. It became a positive cycle. This was a huge change from the shy, embarrassed person I had been before. One of the most powerful lessons I learned is this: to speak better, first you must listen better. In the past, I thought speaking practice meant talking as much as possible. But if you don't know the right sounds, you are just practicing your mistakes. So I changed my approach. I listen to English every single day: podcasts, news, YouTube, TV shows, songs. But I didn't just listen for meaning. I listened for the music of English, the rise and fall of the voice, the stress on important words, the way some sounds connect and others disappear. I started to notice patterns. For example, native speakers often say gonna instead of going to in casual speech, and wanna instead of want to. I didn't copy every informal style, but I trained my ears to recognize it. This deep listening made it easier to reproduce the sounds when I spoke. The second tip is to record your voice. I know, it feels strange and uncomfortable at first. When I heard my voice the first time, I thought, do I really sound like that? But recording yourself is like using a mirror for your voice. You can hear your mistakes, your unclear words, and your strong points. I would choose a short text, read it aloud, record it, and then listen while following the text. I asked myself, did I pronounce all the endings? Did I stress the right words? Were my vowels clear? At first, I heard many mistakes. But over time, I also heard progress. Listening to your own recordings lets you track your journey, and sometimes, you'll be surprised at how much better you sound compared to a month ago. Every learner has certain sounds that are difficult. For me, it was th and the difference between long and short vowels. For you, it might be r and l, or b and v. Don't try to fix every sound at once, that's too much. Instead, choose one or two problem sounds and work on them until you feel comfortable. Practice them in single words, then in short phrases, then in full sentences. For example, if your r is weak, practice red, road, rain, really. Then, the red road is really long. If your v is hard, practice very, voice, love, move. Then, I love to move my voice. This focused practice is faster and more effective than random speaking. The last tip is to make pronunciation practice a short, daily habit. You don't need hours. Even 5 to 10 minutes can make a big difference if you do it every day. Read a paragraph aloud while imagining you're speaking to a friend. Repeat a sentence from a TV show until it sounds natural. Say tongue twisters to warm up your mouth muscles. For example, 33 thin thinkers thought thoroughly. It's fun, and it trains your mouth to move in new ways. Daily practice works because your muscles learn slowly, little by little. Just like going to the gym, small, regular exercise is better than big, rare workouts. Here's something important: pronunciation is not something you finish. It's a journey. Even native speakers work on their pronunciation: actors, public speakers, teachers. At first, I thought I would practice for a few months, fix my pronunciation, and then be done. But now I see it differently. I see it as an ongoing skill that grows with me. And that's okay. The good news is, once you build a strong foundation, it becomes easier to keep improving. The small habits you build today will keep giving you results for years. I like to repeat this to myself, every day, a little better. Some days, improvement is big: you finally master a sound or get a compliment from someone. Other days, improvement is invisible: you just practice your routine and nothing feels different. But those invisible days are not wasted. They are part of the process. If you keep going, the results will come. Think about planting a tree: you water it every day, but you don't see it grow overnight. After months or years, you look back and realize it's much bigger. Your pronunciation journey is the same. One of the biggest changes in my mindset was learning not to fear mistakes. In the beginning, I hated speaking because I didn't want to sound wrong. But this fear kept me silent, and silence doesn't help you improve. Now, I speak even when I know I might make mistakes. Why? Because every mistake is feedback. If someone asks me to repeat, I learn which word I need to fix. If someone misunderstands me, I think about which sound was unclear. Without speaking, I would never get this information. Mistakes are not the end, they are the teacher. I want you to remember something: your voice matters. When I was shy about my pronunciation, I felt like my voice was small, like it didn't deserve to be heard. But now I know, the world needs your ideas, your stories, your jokes, your experiences. Clear pronunciation helps people hear you, but the most important thing is that you speak. Don't wait for perfect. Start speaking now, and let clarity grow over time. You never know who might be waiting to hear exactly what you have to say. When I look back at my old self, the person who couldn't order tea without confusion, who avoided phone calls, who lost opportunities because of unclear speech, I feel proud. I'm proud because I didn't give up. I kept going, even when progress was slow. If I can learn to speak clearly, so can you. You don't need to be gifted at languages. You just need patience, daily practice, and a little courage to keep speaking even when it's hard. Remember, clarity is a skill, not magic. Skills can be learned. So here's my final message to you: start today. Speak tomorrow. Speak better every day. You might feel nervous. You might feel shy. That's normal. But with every word you practice, you are building a stronger voice. One day, you will order food without a problem. You will talk to strangers with confidence. You will give presentations and enjoy them. And you will look back and smile, thinking, I did it. The journey starts with one step, or in this case, one sound. Take that step today. I'll be cheering for you, every word of the way.